Welcome back, guys, to another Professor FNE Teaches History. So,
Alright.
today we're going to be going over, it's a pretty short unit. We didn't do a lot.
Yeah.
It's just the Washington administration, which was the first administration of the United States.
No way.
Yeah, if you didn't know that. So, it goes all the way back to, obviously, the American Revolution. General George Washington was a great leader.
Yeah.
Everyone loved him. They won the revolution, and now America is starting to be formed.
Mm-hmm.
The people looked up to Washington as an inspiration, as a leader, so they only thought it would be fit for him to run the country. So, at this time, the Constitution was brand new. They were still figuring stuff out. The Articles of Confederation.
They were ironing out
The Bill of Rights. This is kind of like a test. They didn't know how the democracy that they fought for was going to be ran. So Washington had a very important job because every choice he made,
he was the first.
Yeah, he set all
What
these
he
precedents.
did, yeah, everything that he did was a precedent to be carried on in the future. And if he messed up now, then that could lead to the end of a country that just started.
So the big question through this unit and this administration was kind of how much power the national government should have versus the federal, which brings me into
the same thing. He means federal versus state.
What I said?
National.
Oh, I meant federal versus state. Yeah. So that brings us into the first. We're breaking this down a specific way. That brings us into the first
and not
part.
only federal versus the state, but also federal versus the people in general. It's really how powerful you want the federal government to be. Among other things, a lot of decisions with foreign countries and a lot of other decisions. George Washington has to choose. He has a lot of choices to make, and these choices are very important. But what he did is that he got it right most of the time.
Exactly.
So we're going to go into a bunch of different decisions that he made. So he had a cabinet, right, like any president does. It's part of the executive branch. The executive branch isn't just the president. It's the president is the figurehead, and he has a lot of guys under him that don't really hold any power except for the fact that they're able to advise the president, tell them what to do. So there were, I think, 5 cabinet members, but the 2 most important ones that are on different sides of the spectrum is Hamilton and Jefferson. Hamilton was a Federalist, which generally supported a stronger federal government, but there's a lot more niche things that they had different stances on. It's not just power to the federal government. We don't want power to the federal government. There's a bunch of other things. And Jefferson is part of the Democratic Republic.
The Democratic Republicans.
Party. Democratic Republican Party is what I...
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Jefferson versus Hamilton, they had very different ideas, as Professor E just stated. They had 2 very different visions for America. So Hamilton was the Secretary of Treasury.
Yeah.
And which kind of goes hand in hand with who he was, because he had very strong beliefs on the economy and industry and finance.
He was the money guy.
Yeah, he was the money guy. And then Jefferson was the Secretary of State, and he wanted power to be more in the hands of the states and stuff like that, what Matthew just went over.
Secretary of State also means foreign relations.
Yeah. So their disagreements over the economy, foreign policy, all this stuff, Professor was saying that led to the first forming of political parties.
Yes.
It's sort of...
These were the first political parties.
Yeah, they were starting to shape out the Federalist ideals versus the Democratic Republican ideas. And that sort of formed 2 parties. So the first debate they had was the future of the economy in America, whether they wanted a strong national bank or government or more dispersion to the states. So Hamilton's plan was eventually chosen. Yeah, do whatever you think.
This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do for everything we talk about, that's Hamilton versus Jefferson, I'm going to write the thing up here.
What actually happened?
And then I'm going to have Federalist.
HVJ, yeah. Okay, Federalist was Democratic Republicans.
Yes.
Smart.
And then I'll erase.
Yeah,
I'll
we'll
erase
do that.
that.
Perfect. So, so with the economy, Hamilton... So Washington was kind of the moderator between Jefferson and Hamilton when they would have their debates, and Washington for the economy eventually sided with Hamilton. That's going to be sort of a reoccurring theme because Washington, looking back on it, probably leaned a little bit more towards Federalist ideas.
That does not mean that he was a Federalist, though, because we'll get to this later when we talk about his farewell address. He hates the idea of political parties, so he thought choosing a side would even further split parties when we get to more presidencies to come. So the first thing we're going to talk about is Hamilton's financial plan.
So Hamilton's financial plan the goal was to get America out of debt after the Revolutionary War. They owed a lot of money to people that helped them out or just for expenses in general. So Hamilton, first of all, he had the national government assume all of the state's debt. So originally New York had a certain amount of debt and Georgia had a certain amount of debt. But now instead of like independent debt, Hamilton made it a collective United States debt, which goes beyond economics. Obviously, that's a nice thing to do. Like, he's taking on the debt of these states. But it's also kind of making the United States more united indirectly, because now instead of each individual state having its problems and its economy, he's trying to make things like the United States economy and just strengthen that nationalism and patriotism. So his next goal was to create a national bank. This has been debated for a very long time at this point, and it continues to get debated in the future. But he wanted a place to hold government money. He wanted to be able to give out loans and to issue this is the huge one, issue like a countrywide currency. Mm-hmm. Because before that, all the colonies and all the states, you'd have Connecticut dollars and Delaware dollars and stuff like that. So it was very hard to do trade domestically, which means in the United States, because you had to exchange currency and they had different values, and it just made things a lot more difficult than it had to be. So this countrywide currency that was very stable made it a lot easier to do domestic business and strengthen the economy of the United States. Then the next part of the economic plan was the tax and tariff system, where Hamilton implemented tariffs on other countries to make trading more fair and more beneficial for the United States, which is actually very good. Tariffs are still relevant in today's society.
Very.
Yeah, especially the Trump administration. So this was kind of like the start of it for the United States.
So what tariffs basically are, in case you don't know, is that you put a tax on foreign goods imported in your country. So someone, say, I want to buy a phone.
Yeah.
And the phones from China, even though the Chinese are buying their China phones for $5, when they come to America, Trump is going to raise that $5 to $100, and our phones are, let's say, $10. I'm not saying that China's phones are better than ours. They're not, because
Apple.
That's another thing. But because we don't want the China goods anymore, we buy our own, which helps Apple, which is an American brand.
Exactly. It's raising the prices of foreign brands, so you're kind of forced to buy American.
Yes.
So, and then here's the more of the negative. They started to implement taxes, such as the whiskey tax.
Mm-hmm.
And the people that were doing this were Hamilton and Jefferson. They were like lawyers who were kind of like wealthy and had like not Hamilton, but a lot of the founding fathers. So when this whiskey tax was placed on the farmers, a lot of them felt that they were once again being taxed without representation, because no one that made this decision was actually a farmer, or actually one of them.
Yes, because not only did farmers grow and like sell their whiskey to other people, which now they're getting taxed, like they're not going to get as much, popularity with it. They used whiskey as currency, and now their whiskey's getting taxed, and they can't use it as currency. Yeah. And there's also some niche thing is that because whiskey's getting taxed, people don't want to use whiskey to trade anymore, and besides whiskey, what everyone else was using, besides those poor farmers, is gold. And because now there's not just the rich want gold, even the poor farmers want gold too, then the price of gold skyrockets. And now we have Hamilton with so much gold in the bank. Now that the value of that gold is even more.
Yeah, so it was kind of a little bit strategic, some people say, from the founding fathers to kind of benefit their own pockets. But the last thing Hamilton did is he was so big on just encouraging manufacturing and industry. He wanted to jumpstart that industrial revolution. He thought that that's what America needed to become an economic powerhouse. So Jefferson obviously disagreed.
He was against that.
Yeah, he said that the Constitution didn't allow a bank because it didn't say that directly. Mm-hmm. So that leads into the Elastic Clause a little bit, which we're going to get into. All right, actually, I don't know. The Elastic Clause is basically where Hamilton believed that you should take the words of the Constitution and interpret them and you can still do stuff that's not directly quoted in the Constitution, but is kind of inferred. Jefferson said if it's not word for word stated, you can't do it. So that's why he argues against the national bank. He feared that the plan was favoring the wealthy rather than the farmers and the common people.
Yeah, and elastic clause, if that's hard to memorize, elastic, like you're stretchy, so you kind of can stretch the words of the Constitution.
Exactly. Yeah, so Washington, as I said, eventually sided with Hamilton. He approved the bank, and he kind of set a precedent for federal power over the economy.
Star on here because this is what Washington chose. Washington chose to support the bank, which was a good decision for the most part.
Yeah. Okay. So, Matthew, you talk about this.
The Whiskey Rebellion.
We talked about it a little bit.
So, these farmers were, I don't remember it, but
Yeah.
These farmers were pretty mad, right? Because their whiskey's getting taxed. Like, oh, screw all these fancy guys in suits. So, they started protesting. And, protesting's fine until it gets violent, which it almost always does. And Washington had to decide what to do. So the Whiskey Rebellion, even though it was a rebellion that the people that were rebelling weren't Hamilton or Jefferson, Hamilton and Jefferson definitely had a say in how to support/suppress it. So Washington had to decide how to put the rebellion down, because that can't be going on in his country. So to Hamilton and the Federalists, they thought that rebellion threatened the rule of law, that they were doing something unlawful and unruly. So the Federalists believed Washington should send troops and forcefully put it down. Jefferson said that no, you can't do that. That's a government overreach, which is a smart word to know if you want to write it in something. It means that the government is overstepping their boundaries, overstepping their power. He said, no, we need to negotiate peacefully with it. He said that sending troops is the same kind of tyranny you see in England, for example, which is what the Americans are fighting against.
So this goes back to, I don't know if you guys remember from last unit, Shays' Rebellion is where the people rebelled and it exposed the Articles of Confederation for being weak, and because the federal government didn't have an army to stop this rebellion. So as Matthew tells you a little bit more about the Whiskey Rebellion, you'll see how the Constitution is really strengthening that federal government and creating a strong United States.
Yes, so Hamilton decided to side with the Federalists. Washington decided to side with Hamilton and the Federalists. Once again, he personally led troops down to the border, which I think it shows his character.
Yeah,
because during the war he was on the front lines as well.
Exactly.
That's why people loved him, is because he didn't do things behind his desk.
Yeah.
He really went
went out there
to make
100%.
sure. And I think the reason that he sent troops there was to make sure things didn't get out of hand.
Yeah.
Which doesn't mean he was supporting the Federalists. Again, he's always kind of
moderate.
in between. He's always kind of moderate.
But he just felt that on this issue.
Yes, he led 13,000 militia troops to shut it down, which was the first test of federal authority. It kind of proved that this Constitution really does kind of work.
Yeah, exactly. Now our government is running smoothly. We have power. We're able to suppress rebellion. It kind of brought away a lot of the fear that people had about the United States failing.
Yes.
Do you want to do the next one?
It's Britain. Okay, so America had this really cool revolution, right? And France helped out with this revolution. And they didn't like their government at the time either. So hey, what if we do the same thing? So that started the French Revolution of 17-something. I don't remember exactly which one. But France had overthrown its monarchy successfully, and Britain was fighting to stop the revolution from spreading. Because if you don't remember, last year, there was this whole thing with and kind of in ninth grade as well. It's the people that were in power didn't like revolutions to spread, because everyone that was leading was in the same family.
Yes.
So they were no, we want to keep our power. So Britain didn't like the revolution.
Because they thought that now America did it and now France did it. Next is the British.
Next is, they always think that domino effect, next is them. So the Federalists sided with Britain for stability and trade, because even though that, Britain did oppose some unfair taxes when America was its colony, now that America is not its colony, Britain is able to trade with them peacefully. And not only that, Britain is still kind of their only option here.
Yeah, they were kind of intertwined already.
Yes, because America was 100% dependent on Britain, and when it became its own colony, yes, it did form other branches with with other countries, but there was still this very heavy reliance on Britain, and the Federalists believe that if you went away from Britain and Britain stopped trading with you, it would be very bad.
Basically, a lot of the merchants' connections were still with the British people,
Yes.
so they relied on them for their trade and like their economy. So they felt, you know what, we may as well side with them. They're more valuable to have on our side than France.
The Democratic Republicans chose to side with France for a couple reasons. One, just the aspect of liberty, equality, and fraternity.
They were fighting for the same thing.
What did
Last
I
year,
say?
French
Is
Revolution.
that Napoleon?
No, that was the French Revolution.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Liberty,
Yeah.
equality, and fraternity.
So,
they have
yeah.
the same idea.
they had the same idea, and the Democratic Republican Party was like, yeah, they're fighting for the same things we are. Let's support the cause even further and help them with a revolution of their own.
And then not
Also-
even that. Oh, go ahead.
Also, France helped out the Americans a lot during their revolution, like a lot. If France didn't get involved, then it would be very likely that we were still a British colony today.
So Jefferson was just arguing, they helped us. We have to be reciprocal and we have to help them. Like, it's only fair, blah, 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 but
You have to reciprocate it.
yes.
What did Washington choose? He chose neither and both at the same time. He chose neutrality, saying that he would stay out of foreign affairs, which is a really big power move. He didn't want anything to do with it. He's like, hey, if it's not really our place to step in, we can just let it be, which was a very, very smart decision.
America was this new nation. People wanted to know where they stood, which side of wars they were going to be on. And Washington said, we're focusing on us right now. We don't even want to be involved.
And that, again, we talked about how Washington set the precedent for things to come. That thing of neutrality is a recurring theme throughout American history. If you remember,
neutral,
both world wars, we tried to stay neutral
Yeah.
until like things like, again,
We were personally attacked.
World War II, we stayed
Yeah.
neutral. We're like, no, we don't want until Japan bombed Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
Like, and then we decided to end.
So it shows that even 100 years later,
Yes.
like, the same values are still
Yes.
instilled in the people.
You want to talk about slavery?
I'd love to. So, the next big issue, obviously, of the time was slavery. The Americans just fought this whole revolution about, like, having
Freedom.
equality and freedom, but there were still enslaved people. So, people wanted to possibly change that. So, with slavery, we're also going to talk a little bit about the Haitian Revolution. So, across the Caribbean, there were a lot of enslaved nation islands that held African American people, such as Haiti.
Haiti
So,
was big. Haiti got a lot of sugar in it.
Haiti, eventually, they rebelled. The slaves in Haiti were like, we're done, we're rebelling. So, Hamilton and Jefferson had very different ideas. See, you would think that Hamilton, the guy who cares about the economy, is gonna support slavery. I mean, what is it?
18 minutes.
Okay, that's fine. Would support slavery, and Jefferson, the guy who wants power to the people, would support ending slavery.
But it's not that black and white. Again, like, different policies are different for many different
And
things.
these people that were making these decisions, they had personal intentions in the back of their mind at all times. So Hamilton, he supported Toussaint Louverture, which is the guy who led the Haitian Revolution.
And slavery in general is a different subject. I'm actually going to change that to the Haitian Revolution because
Yeah.
that's more direct.
That's true.
Really, what happened is that Hamilton wrote a bunch of papers saying slavery is bad, but he never actually did anything in person.
Yeah.
And Jefferson loved slavery.
So that gets me
He
to the next
loved
point.
it.
Jefferson, though he loved liberty and equality and wanted to support the French in their revolution, he did not like the revolution in Haiti because he just feared that it would happen in America. And we spoke about Jefferson and how he was a farmer himself and how he believed that the farmers should run the economy and all that stuff. But the thing is, for the farmers to be successful, they need slaves. So a slave revolution was his worst nightmare.
He was also, and to be quite honest, Jefferson was really racist.
Yeah,
He was a really
extremely.
racist person.
So,
Like, again, even relative to that time period. Everyone was racist during that time period.
but like Jefferson was extra.
Yeah.
He was extreme. So Washington, as we know, he stayed neutral. He stayed cautious. He didn't offer clear support to either side. And it just once again goes to show his focus on stability and neutrality rather than like picking a side. So The revolution's success was evident. The slaves did overthrow the government in Haiti, and it really terrified Southern slaveholders. They felt that their work was at risk, but it did inspire a lot of abolitionists across the North, because it made people think, oh wow, like these slaves just revolted. Maybe it's time we do something to help our slaves.
Oh, I forgot to talk about this. So Hamilton, you know, he was kind of grasping with the ideas of liberty and, you know, still trying to keep slaves in check. Hamilton was a very progressive person. He was not as racist and as controlling of African Americans as other people were. He didn't like slavery, but the reason he didn't do anything about it was not because he was racist, but because he didn't want it to get in the way of his campaign. What he did when he posted writings, he made fake names. He was like, pseudonyms. He's like, he's writing things as different people just to get the ideas out there, while Alexander Hamilton was not a completely progressive person when it came to slavery. He quietly supported slaves because he himself saw it as a fight for independence, but he believed, and he was right to believe, that others didn't think that it was a fight for independence.
Exactly. When you're a politician, everything's about your popularity, and if he went out and openly said we should get rid of slavery, everyone in the South that owned a farm would not even consider casting a vote for him.
Exactly. And it kind of shows like a difference. It's kind of a difference between like a difference between politics.
So that brings us to the Native Americans. You got this one?
Oh.
This topic isn't as important. I mean, we didn't talk about it a lot in class.
No, we definitely didn't.
Yeah, definitely not. So I don't think it's going to show up too much, but obviously still relevant to talk about. Just try.
Okay, so the Northwest Indian War, which was it ended in a Native American policy. Okay, so in the Northwest Territory, Northwest, which is kind of where Michigan is, Northwest is, we're not talking about Oregon yet and Washington. But in the Northwest Territory, Native tribes formed a confederacy to resist U.S. expansion. It's, you know, that's like a classic thing to do when like you're a lesser power and there's a bunch of other lesser powers. You want to band up to kind of stay away from this big bad group of people. So Washington's government sent troops, leading to years of brutal fighting. The Treaty of Greenville forced tribes to surrender most of present-day Ohio. Hamilton had supported peaceful coexistence and education. Jefferson believed Native people would eventually sell their land or move west. So this isn't a big thing. The reason why, because Hamilton and Jefferson weren't really disagreeing that much. The only thing they were disagreeing about is what would happen with the Native Americans, but it's not disagreeing about, oh, should we send troops, should we not send troops? Like, it wasn't focusing on their relations between the Native Americans, it was focusing on what the Native Americans would do.
Yeah, so that's not a big topic.
Yeah, let's
whatever. Moving on.
The rise of political parties.
So this is probably one of the most important.
We talked about this earlier.
Yeah, so it's not going to be so much.
So again, like the Federalists had Hamilton, John Adams was also a Federalist. We don't even know that at the moment. And Jefferson and James Madison, which will also happen in the future, were Democratic Republicans. So again, we talked about this. The Federalists wanted a strong central government, an industrial economy. Industrial, just think of like, you know, cities like producing like heavy goods and stuff like that. And they were pro-British when it came to foreign policy. The Democratic Republicans liked strong state governments. They liked a more agrarian economy, which agrarian is agriculture. It's the same stem of the word. And they were pro-France. These divisions shaped early debate from, the National Bank all the way to Jay's Treaty, and they still influence American politics today. They still shape American politics today. Again, the political parties are much different today than they were a while ago.
But this is just kind of the start of it all.
Yes. So, George Washington, a great 2 terms of service. The people were like, let's do 3. You can do this the rest of your life.
We're done talking about those are all the disagreements.
Yes,
now the differences. Now we're going out to Washington's goodbye.
Yes. So,
what it meant.
George Washington, everyone's like, oh my God, Washington, we love you, stay for the rest of your life, you're doing great. But Washington was like, no. People think it's for a bunch of reasons. The big one that resonates with people the most is that no, he wanted other people to take control because he believed that the country was very stable, and it was a really great opportunity for him to move on and allow other people to come in and do things because he didn't want to be a tyrant. He wanted to be labeled as a tyrant because the only thing that they were
the people were scared that another Britain was going to happen and another tyranny and a monarchy. So Washington said, you know what? I don't want to have this position for life. 8 years maximum. No one else can go longer. I'm ending my term here.
He didn't say that, but some people liked him so much he set a precedent until
FDR went for 4 terms because people liked him a lot too.
Yeah.
So into his actual farewell address, he talked about political parties, how they corrupt the world and corrupt government. He talked about foreign alliances, how he wants to stay neutral and how it's very important to focus on America first. And then he also talked about the national debt, and he urged Americans to pay it off peacefully rather than leaving it for the future generations. That last point, they left it for the future generations, and now we have $37 trillion in federal debt.
That did happen, yes.
I could have just made that number up, but it's very high.
It's a big number.
A very big number.
Yeah, a big thing he stressed was unity, and that's why he hated political factions so much, because he believed that the more united, the stronger government would be, which he is entirely correct.
So, all in all, Washington was a great guy. He stepped down. He set this precedent for America. He felt that they were stable enough. It was time for someone else to take over, and we don't want to have a king anymore. So that just goes to show what kind of guy Washington was.
He also wanted to retire.
Yeah, he was.
To be honest, like he said it in his speech. He's like, "Oh, it'll be great for the country. It'll also be great for me because I get to kick back, relax, and enjoy my wealth."
So, in conclusion, the Washington administration, it was the country's first test, and they passed. I'd say they got an A+. Yeah. The debates between Hamilton and Jefferson showed the tensions that were forming with this new freedom and the creation of political parties that still affects America today. Washington's leadership gave stability and prosperity to America. And after he stepped down, he left office, but his ideas stayed with him.
Yeah.
So thank you guys so much for listening. It's been a pleasure.
Will see you in the next one. Thank you, everybody.